Thanks everybody for joining. We're going to get started here in just a few. Go ahead, make yourself comfortable while we let some latecomers into the room.
Thanks for joining, everybody. We'll just wait like another minute or so to get started. Okay, I think we'll get ready. Thanks everyone for joining. Nice to see so many faces today. Hello and welcome to the NFL Chalk Talk presented by SnapLogic and Snowflake. I'm Teresa Dodson. I'm the Senior Director of Partner Marketing for SnapLogic, and I'll be your host today. Today's session will be interactive, so I want to make sure everyone knows how to ask questions so we can call on you. In the bottom row, you'll see there's a reaction icon. If you click on that, you can raise your hand, like you'll see I've raised my hand. That will let us know that you have a question for Boomer. After you're done raising your hand, you would just lower your hand after you've been called on. So we want to make sure that you're getting your questions in. So make sure also that you unmute yourself because everyone is muted upon entering the event. Okay, well, we're going to get started. I just want to tell you, we're so excited about this event. I had the pleasure of working with Boomer over the past years, running a number of events, and I'm telling you, you're in for a big treat. Not only is he one of the top former NFL quarterbacks, but he's become one of the most insightful commentator in sports broadcasting. What some of you may or may not know is that he has another passion. He is the founder of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. And that foundation was established to help to find a cure for cystic fibrosis. So under his leadership and his diligence and compassion, Boomer and his team have raised over $150 million to date to help fund drug research and treatment for CF patients. So they've actually had some have benefited from leveraging some of the technology we're going to talk about later in this event toward seeing success in the drug trials. So with that, I wanted to say hello to Boomer and introduce him. He's he's a CBS NFL commentator. He's the host of WFAN's #1 morning show and former quarterback for most notably the Bengals and the Jets. So welcome, Boomer. We're so happy to have you here today.
Hi, Teresa. It's great to be here with you. And I love being with people who love football as much as I do, even though I don't play it anymore, but I've been covering it for now 25 years, as you know. So a big thank you to SnapLogic and Snowflake for having me. And I can't wait to get started here. And, I always like to start these things with just a little story about, some of the things that happened to me when I played. And I don't want to bore anybody. So I try to keep it funny and I try to keep it light. And maybe some people out there on the West Coast, if they're joining us, will appreciate this. Maybe some of you 49er fans out there will appreciate this. But back in 1988, my team, the Cincinnati Bengals, we went to the Super Bowl and we played the 49ers. And this is like, an exciting time in my life. I'm 27 years old. Things are going great. I'm the MVP of the NFL. And we make it all the way to Miami to play the 49ers. And if anybody remembers Super Bowl 23, it seems like it was, it has been decades ago, but you'll remember that our team took the lead with a field goal, 16-13, with about 3 minutes and 30 seconds to go. And I was the player on the Bengals sideline that was selected to go to Disney World if we are going to win the game. So as I get to the sideline and I look at my head coach, Sam Weish, and I'm like, man, I think we may have left a little bit too much time on the clock. You know, it's Joe Montana over there. He's done this before. And Sam goes, nah, we're going to win this one. And he was so confident. So we kick off to the 49ers. So for some reason, their returner returns the ball to their 8-yard line. So they have 92 yards to go in about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And with that, I'm on the sideline now. This is the biggest moment in my life. And I get a tap on my shoulder. And it's the person, the director, who is getting ready to shoot this commercial that I'm going to Disney World. And there are about 20 people that are around me. And all these people are the creative types. Maybe some of you out there are creative types and you know what I'm talking about, and probably don't understand the gravity of the moment for me, a kid who has dreamed of being an NFL quarterback since he was 5 years old. And he's on the field at the Super Bowl in Miami, and he thinks he's going to win the football game, but yet he has to stand there for the next 3 minutes and 30 seconds to watch his counterpart maybe just move down the field and win the game, or maybe our defense, who played really well that day, gets a stop and I get to go back on the field and take a knee, and then I get to shoot the commercial out in the middle of the field. So there are about 20 people around me. They got cameras. They even have makeup people, believe it or not. They have makeup people. They want to know if I know my lines. I have one line. I'm going to Disney World. That's my line. So they wanted me to practice that as Joe Montana is hitting Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Roger Craig. And I'm like, I'm going to Disney World. I'm going to Disney World. Now, 3 minutes and 30 seconds at the end of a football game is an eternity. It's probably like 45 minutes in real time. So you have to imagine me standing on the sideline, uttering the words that I'm going to Disney World. I'm going to Disney World. I'm going to Disney World. And with about 30 seconds left to go, fate would have it, Joe Montana finds John Taylor in the back of the end zone, and he hits him with a touchdown pass. And before I could get the words out of my mouth, I guess I'm not going to Disney World, those people that had been surrounding me for the last 45 minutes had ran away from me looking for Jerry Rice, because he was the one that was going to Disney World from the San Francisco 49ers. I decided to blow off the Pro Bowl and I went to Aruba, and my vacation sucked. So that is really the high point of my NFL career, because, as Teresa said, yeah, I played for the Bengals, the Jets. I also spent a year in Arizona, the Cardinals, and back in the 80s and 90s, those three teams combined were known as the Bermuda Triangle of the NFL. Not everybody could play for the Steelers and the Cowboys and the 49ers and go to the Hall of Fame every year and just celebrate how great those franchises are. Somebody has to play for the other franchises. So I feel like I'm the spokesperson for all those woebegone franchises that have disgruntled fans and unhappy fans. And I deal with a lot of them here in New York on my radio show that are New York Giant fans and, of course, New York Jet fans. And I was a part of the New York Jets for 3 years. And, you know, I had 3 coaches in 3 years. And at the ages of 32, 33, and 34, you know, I had a difficult time dealing with the instability at the top of the franchise. You could imagine what young quarterbacks have to deal with when they have to take over a franchise. And that brings me really to today's game and how the game has changed significantly from when I started playing back in 1984. Everybody expects the rookie quarterback to come right off the college football field, to step right on the pro football field and go out there and have success. Now, some guys can do it and some guys really have a hard time with it. And I think a lot of it depends on the coach, the general manager, the ownership. It also depends on whether or not there's a good enough team around them. So I'll give you a couple of examples of where it's worked and where it has failed. Where it has failed miserably is right here in New York, and it failed with one Sam Darnold of the New York Jets. So he was here for 3 years. He arrived when he was a 20-year-old out of USC, had a defensive head coach that was most likely going to be in the last year of his contract, and things didn't go well because he wasn't mature enough. He wasn't ready to handle it. And then they fire the coach. They bring in another coach, another offensive system. Then they fired the general manager, bring in another general manager. He wants to do things his way. And now all of a sudden, Sam Darnold, unfortunately, is caught up in a tornado and failed. And he failed not miserably, but he did fail because he didn't have the maturity to withstand all the change that was happening around him at such a young age. And tonight, he'll be playing for the Carolina Panthers in his 4th year now, and he's playing with a much better team. He's got a much more stable franchise around him. And he's got a great player in Christian McCaffrey that will drive the engine. It's most likely that they will win tonight. By the way, they're 7-point favorites. The over under, I think, is at about 42.5. I'm taking the over, and I'm taking Carolina. So I'm giving you a little tip there too as well. So I think Christian McCaffrey will go up. He'll have a great game tonight against Houston, and Sam Darnold will continue his resurgence. I'm not thinking that he's going to be a top 5 quarterback, but certainly he can be a serviceable top 15 quarterback in the league if he's surrounded by a good team, which I think Carolina is becoming pretty quickly here. We're all seeing that the first 2 weeks of the season. So that's a failure. The major success to me in my eyes is Josh Allen up in Buffalo. Josh was drafted by Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills 3 years ago. He was in that class with Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. And Josh Allen was a kid out of Wyoming. And he was thrust into the starting role up in Buffalo, which makes total sense when you think about where he came from, the conditions that he played in, and now the small market that he's playing in and the conditions that they play in outdoors up in Buffalo. So it made total sense. And Josh's rookie year was an up and down rookie year, as most of our rookie years are. His more so than most because he had the ability to run, he had the ability to throw. The great thing about Josh is that he's about 6'6", 245 pounds, and he's an unbelievable athlete. So he can always get himself out of trouble, but it always comes back to decision-making for these young quarterbacks. And his decision-making was atrocious his first year. His second year got a little bit better, but Buffalo Bill fans were totally, wondering whether or not he was going to be the answer to the Jim Kelly question up there in Buffalo. And then certainly last year, he really refined his game to the point where he was either second or third in the MVP voting. So that's how you actually bring a quarterback along. You develop them. You keep your same coach. You keep your same offensive coordinator. You keep your same general manager. And there's a stability factor around him, and he could have success. So now that brings me to this year. We have Mac Jones in New England. We have Justin Fields starting for Chicago this week on the road at Cleveland. We have Zach Wilson going on the road to Denver. And of course, we have Trevor Lawrence, who's starting for Jacksonville this week as well. One of the reasons why I said this past week that if they had to do the draft all over again, who would you take number 1 overall? Well, after the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, I said Mac Jones. And the reason I said Mac Jones is because Mac Jones hasn't turned the ball over. His decision-making has been incredible. His ability to absorb all the information that's being thrown at him is even more incredible. And the fact that he has the leadership qualities that everybody looks to makes him a can't miss prospect. And he didn't get drafted until the 15th overall pick. But what also is helping him, and this goes back to my stability standpoint, that the New England Patriots, since Bill Belichick has been there, has been doing it one way the whole time. And if you do it his way, you stay there. If you don't do it his way, you end up leaving. And the real interesting, I think, test for Bill Belichick and the Belichickian way, if you will, in New England will be coming next week when Tampa Bay visits New England in week 4, which is going to be amazing. It's going to be an amazing scene that Tom Brady is going back there. And the interesting thing is that Tom Brady this week is going out to LA to play the Rams, one of the better defensive teams in the league that added Matthew Stafford as their quarterback. So back-to-back weeks for Tampa Bay, it's going to be really interesting to see how Brady comes through these last 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks were great. He was the NFL Offensive Player of the Week in the NFC, 2 weeks running. He's 44 years old. He's incredible, and he makes everybody around him better. So he's like the standard for which everybody now is being compared to. And that's why Mac Jones has a lot of similarities to Tom Brady when Tom was younger, maybe even more so. I mean, he might even be a little bit more advanced than Tom was in terms of the preparation aspect because of playing for Nick Saban, then of course stepping right in and doing as well as he's done for New England. But saying all of that, remember we're going into week 3 and it's a 17-game season now. So a 17-game season means that it's a war of attrition. It always is anyway, but we are so early in the infant stages of this year that so much can change over the next 6 weeks. We could have another call like this and we could see a complete flip in all the standings. Right now we have 7 winless teams, we have 7 undefeated teams, and we have 18 teams at 1-1. The salary cap in the NFL and the decision-making by the general managers and the coaches basically lead everybody to like 10-7, 9-8, 8-9, and 7-10. The bulk of the league will be between those records right there. And then it all comes down who's the healthiest and who's playing the best at the end. They'll ultimately make it to the Super Bowl. Now, CBS and executives, and of course, Teresa, have asked me who's going to be in the Super Bowl. So like I have a crystal ball in front of me. My crystal ball was right last year. I got the two right teams, Tampa Bay and Kansas City. I picked Kansas City to win the game, but I got it right. So I guess I got to take a stab at it today. I did 2 weeks ago on CBS, and I said the Buffalo Bills and the Green Bay Packers, two of the three smallest markets in the NFL, will make it to the Super Bowl. That's what I believe. I believe that because I believe in their quarterbacks. I believe in their coaches. I believe in the stability around them. Although one of those quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, created an incredible amount of drama this offseason for no reason whatsoever. But he found inner peace, and he's growing his hair now for his Halloween costume that's coming up, I guess, in about a month. So we're all excited to see what that Halloween costume is going to be and how his hair is going to flow into it. But I still believe that those two teams are the teams because I do believe in their quarterbacks and their coaches. As far as the championship games are concerned, I don't know whether or not Kansas City can get back there. And the reason that I would hit the panic button for Kansas City is because their defense is atrocious. They have given up more yards on the ground in the first 2 weeks, I think maybe than any other team in the history of the league. If not, it's very close. And the reason I say that is that they've given up over 200 yards on the ground. And in the league that is built on passing and quarterback play and all that other stuff, which Patrick Mahomes does about as well as anybody, you have to stop the other team. The best way to play defense against Patrick Mahomes is to keep him on the sideline. So when teams can run the ball on you, that's the best way to beat them. And that's how they've lost games since Patrick has been there. Now, the Super Bowl was a little bit different because Patrick lost his offensive tackles before the Super Bowl in the playoffs, and he had to run for his life against Tampa Bay. But Tampa Bay was able to run the ball on them. And now all of a sudden we're seeing other teams do the same thing to the point where it's extreme. And that would really worry me. So Kansas City's still going to be in the mix. The quarterback is too great. The wide receivers are too great. They're too exciting. So I think they'll also be in the mix towards the end as well. On the NFC side of things, the Matthew Stafford addition in LA is really paying off. Everybody wondered why Sean McVay wanted to get rid of Jared Goff and wanted to replace him with Matthew Stafford. And I think anybody who watched the Monday or Sunday night game, I think it was between the Packers and the Lions, this some Monday night, Packers and the Lions, saw that Jared Goff has a hard time, creating plays on third down. And they got the 17 points. They had a 4th and 1 on their first series in the third quarter, and he couldn't complete and couldn't keep the ball. And from that point on, the game was over. That was the play of the game. And Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones took over that game. So that's why they wanted Matthew Stafford out in LA. And they're going to be a bitch this week for Tampa Bay. Sean McVay, lost the Super Bowl to Bill Belichick and to Tom Brady. And, Tom Brady didn't play great in that Super Bowl. So I'm sure that Sean McVay is going to have every trick in the book that he possibly can have to get the victory and to beat Tom Brady out there in LA. That would be a huge statement game for the Rams this week if they're able to beat the Bucs, which I think they will beat the Bucs. Actually, I think it's going to be a high scoring game. And I do think that the Rams will pull it out. It'll be a tight game. But I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Donald hits Tom Brady. And it'd be nice to see Tom Brady hit the ground every now and again, given the fact that I think he maybe has hit the ground twice in the first 2 games. This will be a little bit different with Aaron Donald. And as Carson Wentz found out last week, a couple of the teams that I would worry about at the moment at 0-2 would be the Indianapolis Colts. So my college roommate, Frank Reich, is the head coach of the Colts. I did not call him this week. You try to stay away from those guys when they're in a bad mood. And I'm sure Frank is in a bad mood. He had 2 really rough opening games against Seattle and against the Rams, and Carson Wentz is hurt again. And I doubt that Carson's going to play this week. I think it's going to be a kid by the name of Jacob Eason going on the road within the division at Tennessee. Tennessee pulled out an incredible win on the road at Seattle last week with Derrick Henry gaining almost 190 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. So I would worry if I were Indianapolis because they're in a lousy division. I don't think their division is that great. So they can make a run when Carson Wentz comes back. If he comes back, I don't know if he has broken bones in both ankles or they're both sprained. So I would not expect to see him back for another month at least. And I looked at their schedule, and their schedule is going to be pretty difficult. I don't know if they'll get a win or 2, but they have to get a win or 2 over the next couple of weeks just to kind of keep pace with the Tennessee Titans. This is not going to be an easy game for them going down to Tennessee this week. As far as what's going on here in New York, and then I'll open it to questions, Teresa. What happened with the New York Giants and the Washington football team on Sunday was amazing for a number of reasons. And this is where you find out whether or not you have the quarterback that you believe in. So Daniel Jones is one of the best running quarterbacks in football. People laud Kyler Murray. They laud Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. These kids are unbelievable athletes, and they are impossible to tackle sometimes when they're running all over the place around the field and just making secondary plays. Matter of fact, Teddy Bridgewater did that week 1 against the Giants. It's one of the reasons the Giants lost. Daniel Jones is as good a runner as any of those guys in this league, but for some reason around here anyway, in New York, doesn't seem to get a lot of credit for it. But I love the kid, and I love to give the kid credit. And I like to see his growth, and we're starting to see it. And we saw it in a different way, which is really important. And this is what general managers and coaches look for. Sure, they look for the decision-making on the field. That's the most important thing. They want to see that you can make every throw, that you're accurate under pressure, that you can see the blitz coming, that you're not getting ear hold when you should know where the defense is going at this point in his career. He's in his 3rd year. But really what was impressive to me was that during the game, when they went 3 plays and out and kicked the go-ahead leading field goal, they get to the sideline, and one of his wide receivers, Kenny Golladay, looks to be screaming right at Daniel Jones on the sideline. And for all of us who have ever played the game or have ever commentated on games and given opinions after games, we were floored. I was floored because I didn't think Kenny Golladay was that kind of guy that would be screaming at his young quarterback on the sideline, because that's exactly what it looked like. After the game was over, and you had all the CBS, I think it was Fox cameras in the face of Daniel Jones. Yeah, they were covering everything. They go to Daniel Jones. They say, Kenny Golladay looked like he was yelling at you, and you guys have problems on the field. And Daniel Jones said, no, Kenny and I are really close. We're great. It's all good. It's just heat of the moment. Guys are intense. I want my teammates to get the ball, and they want the ball, and they want to make plays. And Daniel Jones, man, stayed above the fray. So that, in the first place, was the best part of all of it, that he was humble, that he took on the slings and arrows and the questions of the media, and never got into the root cause of why Kenny Golladay was losing it on the sideline. So a couple of days goes by. We all in the media have our opinions that Kenny Golladay is completely out of control, can't be doing this to a young quarterback. They paid him a lot of money. He needs to be a leader when he gets here, and he needs to support his young quarterback. So what happens? Well, it turns out that Kenny Golladay wasn't yelling at Daniel Jones. He was yelling at the offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett, which I'm sure many Giant fans would like to yell at too, I'm sure. But the fact of the matter is that Kenny Golladay, number one, should have never done that. But number two, Daniel Jones never let on to anybody that Kenny Golladay was yelling at his coach. Daniel Jones let people think that Daniel Jones was the target of the tirade by the wide receiver. And to me, that's a humble leader. That's somebody who ingratiates himself with his teammates, with his team, with the ownership of the team. And if I were a Giant fan and I saw that and I really understood what Daniel Jones was doing after the game, I would say, I can live with this guy. I can play with this guy. And I do believe that this guy's going to be a success. So if you're from New York and you're a Giant fan, he may not be pretty as some of the other guys are, but I think he is a great leader, and I think he showed that on Sunday. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Teresa. And Teresa, if you want, we can take some questions and we can dig into the NFL season.
Sounds good. Boomer, thank you. We do have a question from Andrew Seducate. I don't know.
Seducate. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Teresa.
Oh, Andrew Seducate. You don't know that? I know Andrew Seducate. How you doing, Andrew?
Good, Boomer. Big fan. Very big Jet fan. I was born that way. I had season tickets my whole life. So I sat through 93, 94, 95 at every home game. I want to apologize if you heard me in 95 saying anything from the stands. Might not have been directed at you. But you played for two of the worst coaches in the NFL over those 3 years. I'll leave Pete Carroll out of it. You guys can figure out who the other two are. So my question for you is really around Zach Wilson. How much do you believe Zach can perform and develop under Saleh and the offensive coordinator?
I believe he's a really good player. I do. And I went back and watched their last game film. He threw 4 interceptions. 2 of those were really bad throws. One went through the hands of Corey Davis. The other one was just a little bit off because he was negotiating a unblocked late rusher. So, there are reasons why things happen, but he hits Elijah Moore down the sideline right in stride. I mean, he has got pinpoint accuracy. He wants more and more. So my moles at the Jets, if you want to call them that, tell me that he's a wonderful kid. He's a great leader. The teammates love him. He's always up. He's never down. And he really works at it. And he's the first guy in the building and the last guy out of the building. So what we're watching right now are a lot of growing pains, and these are painful. And I reminded Jet fans, I should say, on Sunday on the NFL Today, that I told you at the beginning of the season that you guys are starting over again. Nobody likes to hear that, but you're starting over again. And that means that there is going to be more hard times ahead. I don't know if they can get the 5 wins this season. They're so young all across the board. It's all about whether or not Zach can make it through the entire season and we continue to see growth. So I'm a big fan of Rob Saleh, and I'm a big fan of Zach Wilson. And hopefully the Jet fan just won't, negative kind of push them out of town, because I've seen so many athletes come through here get killed because of that. So I think they have strong dispositions, and I think we're going to see the best of them in the weeks to come, and then we'll see a legitimate coach quarterback combination in years to come.
Great. Boomer, thanks. Absolute pleasure. Highlight of my week to have a chance to talk to you. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the question, Andrew. Appreciate it. We have a question from Dale Hall.
Hey, Boomer. So I love the story about the Disneyland on the side and the distraction in the middle of, a relatively important game. My question for you is, and we're seeing more of this, is how do these younger quarterbacks, and to some extent the rest of the team, how do they stay focused? That was a unique situation, but you add social media these days. Like, what would be your advice to one of these younger guys coming through with all the distractions, with all the pressure, and then this, advent of social media, which wasn't around in your day? Like, what would you, what guidance would you give them to say, look, how do you stay focused? Because you felt it in the middle of one of the biggest games of your career, but now there's all these other distractions.
That's a good question, Dale. I think Baker Mayfield is a case in point, Johnny Manziel, if you will, where they get caught up early in their career doing commercials, building their brands, if you will. That's the big thing now across all the major sports, building your brands. And they kind of lose focus as to what they're there for and what their brand is all about. They're supposed to be a great football player. They're supposed to care about the sport. So my initial, and I always say this, my initial advice to every rookie quarterback is less is more, meaning turn off your social media. Don't be on social media. And if your mom happens to be on social media, get her the hell off of social media. Get everybody in your family off of social media, because you're going to be hearing all the criticisms coming your way. And it's just, your family's not used to that. You may be as a player, but your family's not used to that. We just saw Patrick Mahomes' brother get into an incident at the Ravens game on Sunday night, where he dumped water on a Ravens fan. And of course, they're videotaping it. You only see part of the videotape. So then now Patrick Mahomes has got to deal with his brother getting into it with the fan. And I'm like, what is his brother even doing at a game in Baltimore? Just sit at home in Kansas City and watch the game on TV, and don't even put yourself through that. When I first got to the Jets, I think I had like 60 season tickets. The second year, it went down to like 20. And then the third year, it went down to like 4. Because it gets so intense for the people that love you and support you, that they want to do everything they can to protect you and to fight back and to give you the protection that they think that you need. And I remember telling Vinny Testaverde when he took over here at the Jets under Bill Parcells, I said, the worst part of being here and growing up here is not so much the criticism that may come your way. It's your family and friends that tell you about the criticism that is coming your way. And then you have to deal with them. So that's what social media, I think, is amplified for these young kids. So if I were Zach Wilson, or if I were Trevor Lawrence, or I'm sure Mac Jones, I would turn off every ounce of social media, keep your interviews to the league minimum requirement, and just concentrate on playing your game. Because your draft position does not validate you as an NFL player. It's your second contract that validates you as an NFL player. So if you are Josh Allen and you signed a $250 million contract extension, or Patrick Mahomes who signed a $450 million contract extension, now they're able to handle, the other part of their job because they've already proven it on the field. Dale, for those young guys to get caught up into any of that stuff, that's just going to send them right down a spiral and they're going to fail. So I would say less is more.
Yeah, the Johnny Manziel is a great example. And so I'm a Manchester United fan. And one of the things that the great manager we had, Sir Alex Ferguson, did is when social was coming out, he shielded them. He did exactly what you said. He's like, he acted like almost like a father too. And I think some of these guys need some of that too. But I appreciate the insight. It's great. Keep it up. I'll let someone else ask another question.
All right, thank you, Dale.
I could do one-to-one with you all.
Yeah. The interesting thing. So the New York Giants have a first-round draft pick. His name is Kadarius Toney, but he has an alias because he's a rap star, and his name is Young Joker as a rap star. And Young Joker was a first-round draft pick this year. His first practice, he had practice with one shoe because he had a shoe problem. He didn't stay around for OTAs because he didn't have a contract. He then came down with COVID. Then he hurt his hamstring, and he hasn't been on the field for the Giants, but maybe for 3 or 6 plays for the first 2 games. And the Young Joker side of him is still engaged with all of his fans, but you have like this confluence of fans. You have NFL fans that want you to be this great player because they drafted you for your fantasy team. And then you have your rap fans who love your music. And, where the lines are blurred. And Joe Judge actually had to talk about something that Young Joker, the rap star, put out on his Instagram page this past weekend about sounding unhappy about his play time for the Giants. And we in the media, what do? We go run with it. And the fact that the coaches even got to talk about it just goes to show you where we are in today's society and how many distractions there really are.
Yeah, crazy.
Okay, Boomer, we have another question from audience member M. Pace.
Hey, thanks. Hey, Boomer. First of all, as a native Long Islander, it warms me to hear your accent since I moved south quite some time ago. Ronkonkoma, and I know Iceland with you. My question is kind of about those same young players that Dale brought up. In having moved south, big Clemson fan, but a daughter who just graduated from Alabama. So I saw Lawrence play for 3 years, and I watched Mac Jones play for just 1. So thinking about how you said, you'd kind of replace them in order in the draft. Wonder what you think, though, from the systems that they each moved into. How successful do you think Lawrence would be had he been a Patriot versus Mac Jones in Jacksonville?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So I always look back at when Russell Wilson was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks in the 3rd round of the draft, not the 1st round, not the 2nd round, but the 3rd round. And Pete Carroll, who was my coach in New York, and I know very well, told me that the moment that Russell Wilson walked through that door was the moment that he knew that was his starting quarterback. But he also knew that he had a top 5 defense and he had a great running game with Marshawn Lynch and a huge offensive line. So they could protect the kid. That was the point. Put him out there. He's smart enough. He played at NC State. He transferred to Wisconsin, played baseball. He could have been a professional baseball player. So he was beyond his years in terms of maturity. So he knew that he had the right guy at the right time for his team. I think Bill Belichick feels that way about Mac Jones and the way that the Patriots are built. The Patriots have a really good offensive line. As soon as they get Trent Brown back, they'll be whole again there. They have 8 defensive linemen that, they spent a lot of money in free agency, got about 8 or 9 of their guys back from the COVID list from last year on defense. And Stephon Gilmore still is not playing in their secondary, and they still have one of the better secondaries of the league. So they could support a rookie quarterback. And that's one of the reasons why I believe after 2 weeks here in the NFL that Mac Jones has been the most successful of all the rookie quarterbacks. I think Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are taking too much on. I think they're playing too much hero ball, that they want to try to be everything that everybody wants them to be. They want to be throwing touchdowns and throwing long passes down the field, and it's costing their teams. Both of them have played spotty and inconsistent football, but there are times in their games where you see that they definitely have the arm strength and they have the talent to throw in the run. They have the talent to stand in the pocket. and they're both going to be really good quarterbacks. I just think right now that Mac Jones happens to be in the best situation. So yeah, I guess if Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson were in New England, we'd probably be saying the same thing about them.
Let me just ask a quick follow-up too. If you're following Long Island quarterbacks at all, what do you think of Jack Cohen with Notre Dame?
Well, I followed Jack because he won an award named after me in Long Island here. So he went to Wisconsin and kind of hit a dead end there because Wisconsin sucks on offense. It's not him. It's their offensive play calling is just atrocious. I'm glad that he went to Notre Dame. I'm glad that Brian Kelly's letting him throw. They play on the road at Wisconsin this week. No, actually in Soldier Field. It's a neutral site game. So I'll be watching that one. And I hope Jack just sticks it to Wisconsin like you can. I hate Notre Dame, but in this case, I'm rooting for Jack Cohen to beat Wisconsin. Hopefully he does it with a big smile on his face when the game is over.
We got another question from Matthew Cerverich.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm here in DC, but I'm actually a huge Eagles fan, which of course means this is going to be a Jalen Hurts question. So,
Yep.
Which is interesting because obviously most Eagles fans, myself included, were anti-Jalen Hurts when they drafted him. Why are we drafting a quarterback? And now I think most Eagles fans are kind of hopeful that he can become the quarterback. But, he's shown all the leadership. He's shown all the intangibles we like. Like, what do you have as his odds of being the Eagles quarterback a year from now? And what's the gap he needs to show or fill?
You know why? You know why you like him? Because he extends plays and he's fun to watch and he's exciting. And he comes from a winning background at Alabama. Much like Tua, much like Mac Jones. He's cut right out of that cloth. I just worry about whether or not he's the long-term solution there. There's a little bit too much inconsistency, but again, he's now dealing with another coach. This is his second coach, and I know Nick Sirianni from his days in Indianapolis with my roommate Frank Reich. Nick's a great offensive play caller. He knows how to call plays, design plays, and he will utilize the skills that Jalen has. And Jalen's a great runner, much like Kyler Murray is out in Arizona. But when you look at Kyler Murray, the way he plays and the way that Jalen is playing right now, Jalen is significantly behind where Kyler is. Kyler has finally figured it out that while it's great to run around and make plays and play from the seat of your pants, the best way to do it is to sit in the pocket and to throw the ball accurately and on time and get rid of it. So Jalen still has a lot to learn in that regard. I'm not sold on the long-term viability of him being a 10-year starter in Philadelphia like Donovan McNabb was, or even the way that Carson Wentz was on the way to being. So he still has a long way to go, and he's got a lot of growth to do before I can buy into him.
Thanks. And I guess like most Eagles fans, I'm rooting for Carson Wentz this year to play well enough to stay on the field, but for Indianapolis not to do so well. So sorry to Frank, but we need that draft.
Yeah, I hear you. But unfortunately, Carson got hurt again. Who knows when we're going to see him? The one thing about Tom Brady, Eli Manning, Brett Favre, that I just absolutely admire the most out of is that every game that they were asked to show up and play in, they showed up and played in. Tom lost the 1 year there, like around 2013, I think, or 2000, I forget which one it was, when he got hit on the knee in the first game against Kansas City. But he has never missed a game since, and he's played almost 3 seasons of playoff games. Think about that for a second. 3 seasons. I played in 5 playoff games my entire career, and Tom Brady, I think, has played in like 42 games in the for the last couple of years. That hasn't been the case for Carson.
Thanks.
And we have a question from Michael Nixon, Boomer.
All right. So speaking of Brady, QB, now maybe with Brady's win at the Bucs last year, maybe I have an answer to my question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Given what you said about Brady, given what you said about Belichick, for the 5, we'll go with the 5 wins, even though he has 6 rings, right? Going with the 5 rings at New England, do you think it's because of Brady mainly, or do you think it's because of Bill and his system mainly, or do you truly think it's really a 50-50 contribution? How do you see that?
I think it's 50-50. I don't care what anybody says. Of course, you got to have the great quarterback that's committed. But I always say in any sport, I don't care what sport we're talking about, let's say the 4 big sports, if your best player buys into what the coach is selling, then everybody else has to follow. So if you've ever been in a meeting room with Bill Belichick, he could just be excruciating. I mean, and he could be infuriating at the same time. He's not afraid to call anybody out. And usually he'll always pick on the top guys, which I think Brady kind of got sick of over the years. And many times Brady has said to us that, you would think that I've never done anything around here the way I get treated sometimes. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be appreciated. But I think the dynamic between the two of those guys, so driven, so passionate, so intense, that it's not shocking to me that it broke up, but I think they both deserve an amazing amount of credit. And when I think about the defense of the New England Patriots all over those years, they beat the Rams. They held them to 3 points in a Super Bowl, I think it was. So when I think of Ty Law and what he did with Peyton Manning and against Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison in a couple of those championship games, that defense deserves a lot of credit. And that was Bill's background. But to Bill's credit, he adapted when the league changed the rules after the AFC Championship game between Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Marvin Harrison, and Ty Law to allow more freedom for wide receivers. What did Bill Belichick do? He told Josh McDaniels, let's go to shotgun. Let's go to 3 wide receivers. Let's get these tight ends involved more. Let's move Rob Gronkowski away from the line of scrimmage. So I think in terms of adaptation or adaptation and understanding the rules and pushing every button the right way and handling games and managing games on the sideline, nobody has ever done it as good as Bill Belichick has done. And the games that I've done as a broadcaster where he has been the head coach and there have been fourth quarter questions about whether or not to go for it on 4th and 1 or whether or not to give a team and let the team score or take a safety and punt it to the other team, get your defense to stop, you get the ball back and you kick a field goal to put it into overtime. I've seen him do it all. And since this is a data and analytics call, I would tell you that he has been ahead of the curve when it comes to data and analytics and how it affects the game of football. And he has used that to the point where now all of a sudden coaches are starting to realize the success that he has had in certain situations. The interesting thing, after 2 weeks of the NFL season, we've had more 4th down situations where teams have decided to go for it. 52, in fact, over the first 2 weeks of the season. That's insane. You would have never thought that number would be that high. And out of those 52 attempts to go for it on 4th down, 25 were successful. So we're seeing a lot more of that because I believe of the influence of analytics on the sport of football, which has probably been around for the last 15 years. It's just that in the last 5 or 6 years, because of baseball's weighted analytics, have we discussed it more in terms of other sports and how it affects other sports and the decision making.
Yeah, great. You sort of hit on what was going to be my follow-up question. I mean, as fans, outsiders, if you will, we hear all the folklore about Brady and his work ethic and how he approaches the game. I was going to ask you, was there something that you were aware of that he doesn't or not aware of that really contributes to his success? And maybe it's the analytics bit of it.
First of all, there really has to be a passion. Because I remember when I was 37 and my last year was in Cincinnati, and I played my last 5 games, maybe the best I've ever played in my career. And the Bengals offered me a 2-year deal to come back, and and I was like, I was done. I was done because the difference in age and the difference of similarities of the way a 24-year-old me would have lived compared to a 37-year-old me with 2 kids was living at the time. I just got so tired of it. I can't even explain the difficulties that I was having with my younger teammates, just trying to get through to them and hang out with them. And it was just like, we were going this way. That to me is like the biggest thing that most of us retire because we just kind of get tired. We have kids and our lives change. And then all of a sudden you're around these younger kids that are maybe not as committed to the game as much as you are when you're older. And it kind of really gets frustrating. So watching Tom do this at the age of 44 and then talking about doing this until he's 50 is remarkable. I mean, it is really remarkable. And then he's got more hair in his head now than he did when he was in his 20s. And the other thing about this, he's probably going to throw more touchdown passes in his 40s than he did in his 20s on the pace that he's on right now. So whatever he's taken, whether it's TB12 or HGH or whatever else he may be taking, I want some.
Yeah, let's take one for the experienced, mature people. That's awesome. Thank you, Boomer.
Yes, you're welcome, Michael.
Hey,
Thanks.
Boomer, we have time for 2 more questions. We'll start with
Okay.
Larry Saleh, and then we'll go to Thad Budzinski. So Larry, go.
Hi, Boomer. Great to meet you here today. I'd like to shift to the broadcast booth for a moment. So for years, you've been doing the NFL on CBS all day on Sunday, and then you would go to your WFAN show on Monday mornings. And for many years, you did Monday Night Football. And then frequently, the day after the Monday night game, you'd be back on WFAN on Tuesday. What kind of preparation and energy did you need to do all that?
5-hour energy, in fact. So I was living on that for a while. You know, it's one of the reasons after 18 years that I retired from the Monday Night Football thing. It just got to be too much. And there towards the end, the last couple of years, I was just doing really Midwest to East Coast games, which was the bulk of the schedule anyway. I couldn't do any of the West Coast games. And I didn't think it was really fair to my partner, Kevin Harlan, that, you know, I would show up for 10 games and he'd end up doing 18 games or whatever amount that we were doing. So at the end, it just got to be way, way, way too much. And I missed those games, though. I missed the opportunity to do those games. And, you know, last year I was throwing a bone right in the middle of COVID. At the last game of the season last year, the Arizona Cardinals were visiting the LA Rams. And Tony Romo, either, I don't know if he tested positive for COVID or was around COVID close contact. He wasn't able to do the game in LA. And on a Friday before that Sunday, my boss at CBS calls me and says, "Hey, you know, can you fly out to LA to go do the game with Jim Nantz?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm in. I'd love to do it." But I said, only one way. You got to fly me private because I'm not flying public because I got to get back Monday morning. I used that as my leverage. And CBS really took great care of me, and I was able to do a game, you know, in place of Tony last year. So I'm still getting my fill for it, but I certainly do miss it. I mean, I loved it, and the fact that I was able to do, I think, 19 or 20 Super Bowls in a row was the really crowning achievement of all that.
Great. And final question from
Thank you,
Thad.
Boomer.
Thad, you have to unmute.
Hey, Boomer, thanks for doing this for us. We appreciate it. So I have an interesting question and want to get your take on it. We've actually met a few times, so I don't know if you remember me, but anyway. What do you think about Cam Newton, where he's headed? There seems to be some opportunity for him to play in the NFL. It seems like he's a little bit of taboo right now. Just wondering what your thoughts might be. And, you know, for I guess now he's become a journeyman, right? So what your thoughts might be as to where he might,
you know,
is his
he
career
and I became journeymen together. You know, I kind of like followed the career path a little bit like he did. You know, once the coach leaves that drafts you, then all of a sudden you kind of lose favor of the new coach that comes in, and then you got to leave and go to another team. And the same thing kind of happened to me. And interestingly enough, Cam Newton, about a week after he was released by the Patriots, you know, he did come out and say himself, he goes, "Look, it's not going to be easy for some team to bring me in, to be the personality that I am and the A-type person that I am." And I thought it was a really honest self-reflection assessment of himself. And I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I kind of understand that. I remember when I signed with the Cardinals in 1996, and, you know, I was calling around the teams to see who would want me and everything else. And I wasn't getting a lot of nibbles, you know, like people thought I was a big personality and I could have been a problem and I was going to make it difficult on whoever the starting quarterback was. And I convinced the Cardinals that I could go out there and play, and I did. And then my last year I went back to Cincinnati, but I had, you know, oddly enough, after that Cardinals experience, I had like 7 or 8 teams that were very interested in me coming to play for them. But I just wanted to go back home for Cincinnati and just finish my career there. And I did. And I went out on a high note, which is what I was most proud of. And I think that's kind of where Cam Newton is right now. And he knows that. And that's why he said what he said. He's had a really great NFL career. I think he'd make an unbelievable TV personality. And maybe not just doing games. I could see him doing so many other things with his personality and his flamboyance. So he'll land on his feet, and he's made a ton of money, and he's going to be fine. I'm just not so sure, like he is, that somebody is actually going to give him, you know, a second chance.
Right. Thanks, appreciate it. And thanks for your candor. Great discussions. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dad. And I just want to say this, Teresa. I know you mentioned something about my foundation earlier on, and I want to say thank you to that. I want to thank you for all your support over the years. Just a little story, and I'll end it here. And it has to do with one of the latest things that our foundation has done, and it does have something to do with data and analytics. So we've invested in a company called Epistemic AI. And Epistemic is, in a very simple way of describing it, is a Google for medical research. And it speeds up the amount of information that medical researchers can sift through to find papers that could support a theory that they may have. And I'm a huge believer in this. And the reason I say this is because in 1993, when I was traded to the Jets, and my son Gunnar and I graced the cover of Sports Illustrated, I'll hold it up here for a second. And you can see it says Quarterback Crusade. And that's my son Gunnar right there, that's on my shoulders. And at that time, he's basically 2 years old. And that's when he was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. And at that time, they told us that he would most likely make it to high school. The median age was 19. And you can imagine how that just scared the living crap out of me and my wife, his mom, Cheryl. And I didn't know really what to do and really where we were going to headed with this thing. And over the last 26 years, we've raised about $175 million, maybe more than, I'm not even sure. But when Gunnar graduated college about 6 years ago, he was at end stage illness, or he felt that way. He fell into a realm of depression, and he was really in bad shape, and his lungs were a mess. And because college can do that to you if you have cystic fibrosis. I mean, you're partying, you're hanging out with your friends and things of that nature. And then lo and behold, we put him in a drug trial for a drug called Trikafta out of Vertex in Boston. And he went on that drug trial. And about 2 weeks later, he and I play ice hockey together, believe it or not. We're on the same team. And we're playing a game during the summer, and we're out on the ice. And normally he's out on the ice for about 25 to 30 seconds. And this particular game, he's out there for about 1 minute and 30 seconds. And all the guys on my team that are around my age, a little bit younger than me, are like, man, what's got into Gunnar? Why is he staying on the ice so long? And why isn't he coughing as much? And why isn't he coughing the ugly green sputum that he would cough up on the ice, as much? And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So after the game, he says, hey, Dad, let's go get a bite to pizza. I'm like, really? Because cystic fibrosis patients, while they do have respiratory problems, that's the main area, they also have digestive problems. And it's a multi-organ genetic disease. And they usually don't like to eat a lot. So we go to the local pizza joint on Main Street in Manhasset. We sit down and he eats half a pie in front of me. I'm like, what the F is going on here? And I looked at him and I said, how you feeling? He goes, man, I feel great. And I looked at him, I said, Gunnar, because he was in the middle of this drug trial. I said, you got the real drug. You got the drug that's going to change your life. And we both started crying at that moment. So this was about 6 or 7 years ago. He started feeling so good. He got a beautiful girlfriend. The girlfriend was like his inspiration. She said, you need to take your knowledge and go and do something with it. So we decided to go to the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. Well, last year, he graduated with his MBA. This year, he's getting a public policy degree. And this past summer, he got married. Right. So that's amazing. Right. So this is all great. So he gets married on Father's Day weekend. And right before that, on a Thursday night, we go to his in-laws' house, and we're going to have a dinner, and we're going to have a little bit of a celebration with just the families. And they decide to give me my Father's Day gift that night, that Thursday night. And what is the Father's Day gift? It's a picture of a sonogram in a lucite frame that Gunnar is going to be a father. Now, for a cystic fibrosis patient to be a father is nothing short of a miracle if he wants to be the biological dad. And he wanted to be the biological dad. They can have sex, they can have all the normal sex, they can pass semen, but they just can't pass their sperm because that cystic fibrosis gets in the way of that. So he had to go and have his sperm removed from his testicles. So he calls it a needle to the nuts. And I can say that because we're all a bunch of adults here. And he and his wife went through in vitro. They had 4 eggs. They did the shell game with the eggs. They picked an egg and they put an egg in. So they handed me this sonogram this Thursday night before the wedding, and I just started bawling. I could not believe that this miracle was taking place. And then, of course, he gets married on Saturday. Saturday night. I have all my friends and all our supporters of our foundation all these years around me. It was limited due to COVID, obviously, but they're all crying with me because he just got married. He's got this beautiful wife. And then he takes the mic at the beginning of the reception and he says, I just want to let you know why my wife looks so beautiful tonight. Now, most women look beautiful in a wedding gown. We all know that. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's always about the bride. And he lets out what he told me that Thursday about how his wife is pregnant with their first child. And this all comes from science, biotech, and the belief that you can actually do something in life to make a difference. It's substance and purpose, if you will. And Gunnar and Darcy are going to have a baby boy, and that baby is going to be born somewhere around Christmas. Like, I think the due date is like the 24th. So knowing Darcy the way I know Darcy, she's probably going to wait until the 25th. But it's a miracle nonetheless. And a lot of that has to do with the science and the biotech industry that relies on so much of data and analytics that you can't even begin to understand. And I'm just a quarterback and I just know a little bit, but all I can tell you is that miracles do happen and we have ourselves a miracle.
That's so fantastic. Thanks for sharing that story. I'm so happy for Gunnar, Boomer. That's just amazing. Good for him. And
thanks, Teresa, and thanks for all your support too, by the way, over the years. Don't think we've ever forgotten that.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for making time today, Boomer. We really appreciate it. I think the conversation and the highlights and insights were just fantastic. I'm already getting hit on chat a lot about how much people just really enjoyed the heck out of this. So, much appreciated. So at this point, I'm going to transition over to Ganesh Subramanian, who's the Director of Product Marketing for Snowflake. And we're going to talk a little bit. So hopefully our audience can hang in with us a little bit. We'd love to talk to you more about data analytics. It was a great transition, Boomer, for the topic. So with that, why don't you go ahead, Ganesh?
Yeah, just super fascinating conversation. Thanks, Boomer, for not only the NFL insights, the data insights, especially around your foundation. So many topics, not only resonant for football, but when you think and take a step back about, the worlds that we live in personally in B2B tech and folks and with real world examples around leadership. I think Boomer touched upon, hey, it's not a person, it's a team, it's a mindset, being able to take personal responsibility and figuring out ways to really improve organizations. I think really those are the macro themes that kind of spawn across verticals or industries or even entertainment, sports or things like B2B tech. And, we're going to talk a little bit here about data-driven marketing, but to me, this starts with truly leadership, and it starts with leadership and drilling it down into execution. But, this is a topic around data analytics. A lot of folks here from the marketing background, figure we first talk about what does it actually mean to be data-driven when we say data-driven marketing. And, I think a lot of people say we're going to be data-driven this year, and it's not very tangible or meaningful yet. But just to kind of highlight 3 of the top use cases, I think the first piece is many marketers say, hey, I don't even know what's being effective, what's not effective. Famous quote, right? Half my marketing dollars are wasted. I just don't know which half. Taking a data-driven approach to understand multi-touch attribution, which media mix is effective. That's really the first step in use cases for using data to be data-driven in marketing. Clicking forward, the second one is around, hey, how do I drive more personalized engagements? So this is where it comes down to, does a one-size-fits-all message make sense? Or how are we going to use data to segment our audiences, get more granular, ultimately getting to a one-to-one type of engagement via data science? Again, heavily reliant on data. And then the third is around, how do you engage customers in the way they want to be engaged? So they're coming back over and over again. The classic examples in the consumer world, right? Around recommendation engines. So you're getting piped the things that you need. But this isn't just true in the consumer world. In the B2B space, folks like T. Rowe Price, Craft Analytics, these are B2B organizations sometimes as well that are engaging with their audiences and their customers and their sales teams to help them know what the next right best action is. So if this is the vision, why is it so hard for organizations? And this pipes back to what Boomer was talking about, right? You've got the rookie quarterback coming in, wanting to do a great job, but the organization isn't aligned to really execute on that. I've seen this time and time out in the marketing world. We have a CMO or a CEO comes down from above and just says, hey guys, look, this is the year we're data driven. Like Alec Baldwin, they take a sip of their coffee and say, you know what, I nailed it. We're going to crush it this year. And this poor marketing analyst, think of them as the rookie quarterback. Maybe not Mac Jones. I'm a Patriots fan, so he's coming into it with a great organization. But the rest of the marketing analysts out there, this message hits them like a ton of bricks. It's not like everyone's sitting around twiddling their thumbs, not trying to be data driven. It's the fact that the organization hasn't set up the right processes and they haven't unlocked the barriers for this marketer to really execute on this. Let's talk about what those barriers are, right? And I think everyone should know what this is on the left-hand side, which is the MarTech landscape, which has grown from 150 applications in 2011 to well over 8,000 today. Just exponential growth of the number of tools that are being used to engage customers across complex journeys. And what this does is creates a number of different data silos. I mean, sure, you get micro optimizations. Maybe you're engaging people in a new channel, but that engagement data is being piped and stored in its own silo. And therein lies the macro problem. That is the challenge that rookie quarterbacks are going into, and they don't have a system to make them successful. So on the next slide, we kind of see, we have a marketer that's trying to be data driven, and they're spending their nights and weekends piping data together, likely in Excel, and they're coming up with some kind of report. And so their next campaign can be successful. But that's not scalable, that's not successful, and that's definitely not the team setting up the player for success. What we want to do is get to that 360-degree experience. And this is like motherhood and apple pie. Everyone's nodding yes, obviously we need this. But now let's talk a little bit about how we get here. So we talk a lot about the data cloud at Snowflake. What is this? This is the purpose-built platform to reduce or eliminate data silos, effectively putting all of your data in the same place such that it can be activated to drive all of those use cases across the enterprise. In healthcare, we're seeing a lot of the use cases that Boomer is alluding to, amazing work, where it takes data and analytics to really take the next step change from everything from R&D drug delivery to commercialization of products. But across verticals, and especially in marketing, Snowflake is being used as a single source of truth to create that customer 360 and then use that data to activate across all these channels. What's phenomenal about SnapLogic is we talked about those data silos previously, all those different silos across the MarTech landscape. SnapLogic is purpose-built to really bring all of that in to your single source and then activate it out to all of those different marketing channels. And so with just a couple different tools as a leader, you're going to be able to set up your team for success by giving them that single view of your customer. Now let's unpack that a little bit more. This isn't just vaporware, this concept of the data cloud or the idea that you can really eliminate these data silos. What you see here on the screen is an actual view of the data cloud, and each dot represents an organization. Maybe it's a SaaS technology in your MarTech stack. And the lines represent actual sharing of data across those organizations. So this thing is real. And if you're not getting on top of this now, you're really falling behind the 8-ball. And now I just want to spend 2 minutes talking about what do you actually do from here? I think the theory is great, but I want to help you just take one step further to get it into practice. And the first step, we always talk about this customer 360-degree view. It can be a bit daunting, and I think putting the perfection in way of making progress is the common pitfall. People might think about this as a data transformation effort. I like to think of it as very practical, thinking about the use cases you're trying to accomplish, and then working backwards to identify the first party, the second party, and the third party data you need to go solve that use case. You likely have a view today, but now what's the challenge you're trying to accomplish? Is it that attribution problem? Maybe if you're in B2B, you're trying to understand the value of different channels or content you're producing. Maybe if you're in a consumer-facing organization, it's more around connecting your social media to some of your email, SMS touchpoints. All of this can be tackled as long as you do it in a bite-sized incremental way. And the key is then setting up that incremental process with the platform that scales. And so the next time you tackle a problem, you don't want to have to recreate a new data silo. What you need is a platform that can handle any type of data in any format at that type of scale that you want to achieve. So you're not ripping and replacing every time you want to solve a problem. And then the 360 is the first piece in what we consider the marketing analytics journey. We've seen a number of organizations go through this journey. And again, it's that iteration process. You improve your customer 360 that helps you with their attribution, which then enables you to better target your customers and have finer campaign optimization. Then you ultimately achieve that view of data science where you're getting to more predictive analytics and one-to-one engagement and personalization. Now this kind of repeats itself, right? You learn a little bit more about your attribution, which leads to a more refined customer 360. And you have even more personalization in your campaign segments, which drives more information back into your customer 360. And so I'll leave you with that. You know, I think it's really setting up your team for success. You can't just expect to be data-driven overnight. You really need to take some of the barriers out of the way. And I think that the data silo problem is the most common, well-researched and tackled problem that we have. But finally, we have the technology to get out in front of this. And I think it's going to have a huge impact. And now, Michael, I think what you wanted to do here was actually make this really tangible for folks with a real life story.
Yeah, but in the interest of time, we're going to really cap it here. Dinesh, sorry, that was really excellent walkthrough. I want to thank Boomer. Yeah, had we had the time, we would have walked through an actual example. And I know that the executive lead with T. Roy Price is actually joining us on this call and giving her a little props for the success they've implemented with their customer 360 program using a combination of SnapLogic and Snowflake. But we're going to roll past that. And in respect of everyone's time, given that we're already 5 minutes over, I'm going to just flash through before and after architecture just to kind of get to this next point, which is we have another webinar coming up very soon. Go out to snaplogic.com/webcast to sign up for it. I mean, if you want to learn about a 135,000 people company that is spread across 100 different countries and how they were able to decentralize application building and empower users to do their own integrations, you're going to want to hear from Jamie Locks at Schneider Electric and learn how they use enterprise automation to transform the Schneider Electric. So when you register, we'll also provide a free download of enterprise automation for dummies written by yours truly here. So download that, register, download that book, and join us with the next webcast. And so again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to cap it right here and say thank you for Boomer and his participation. Thank you, Ganesh, for that excellent walkthrough. Appreciate that. And then obviously, Teresa, thank you to you and your team. I'm gonna bounce it back over to you to close it out.
Thank you so much, Michael. And also you, Ganesh, was a wonderful presentation. I think it was very meaningful and really tied back to the importance. I like the real world story from Boomer to help to bring that to light. And I think to help people understand the importance of data and analytics in their business. So thanks to everyone for hanging in and with us. We ran a little long, but we really do appreciate it. And please do check into our upcoming webcast. We appreciate that as well. Have a great day, everybody.
You still on, Teresa?
Yep, I'm still on.
Hey.
Nice.
Right, so okay, I'm going ahead, stop share and log out. We'll connect offline, okay?
Okay, I'll log out. Thank you.
All right, amazing session. Boomer was fantastic.
So good, so good.
Yes, all right, bye-bye.